In today's show, Vegas has the Blazers over-under win total at 21.5. That seems a little bit low, doesn't it? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, the good folks over at Fanduel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, have released their over-under win totals for every team in the league. You are listening to Wednesday, July 24th show, and on Tuesday, the FanDuel came out with over-unders for every team in the league. They got the Blazers as the worst team in the Western Conference, which is like, dang, that's harsh. Maybe not a surprise, but dang. Still harsh when you see it all written all out there right there on the app. That's what we're going to talk about today. I want to talk that win total, kind of where they peg some other teams across the league and look at sort of the East versus West split and how that might play out for the Blazers. I want to talk about how the Blazers can beat that win total because I do think it's a little bit low. And I want to talk about in the second segment how they can beat that win total. I think it is imminently beatable for them to get a 22nd win. And then we'll close the show talking about what would need to go wrong or what would need to transpire is maybe a better way to say it for them to not hit that 22nd win. So let's get into it. FanDuel has the Blazers as the worst team in the Western Conference, or it's not. Let me be clear about what odds are. Odds are not necessarily a predictor of outcome. They are a line in which odds makers can draw in order to entice action. So like some teams, mainly that one purple and gold team in Los Angeles, they often will get somewhat inflated odds because there's a lot of Laker fans and those people will chase them in the betting world. You'll see this with bigger markets is sometimes they just they get juicier numbers because there's a lot of enthusiasts out there. So I don't think this is necessarily like a prediction. Okay, this is an over-under line in which FanDuel believes that they can get action that will be beneficial to the house, but draw you in to also bet on it. And the Blazers are picked in the first of the year, 21.5 as the over-under, the lowest over-under win total of any team in the West. Yikes. And it's not close. Utah, second lowest over-under win total, 27.5, a full 6 games clear of the Blazers for the over-under line. Woo-hoo-hoo. I think I'm not surprised that the Blazers are picked to be the worst team in the West. If you are a long-time listener to the show, shout out to the everydayers. I've been saying right here on this podcast that the Blazers are the worst team in the Western Conference, and it's fine. Because it is. It's part of the plan. They're not trying to be like demonstrably better, right? They're trying to be incrementally better, and their goal is not to be like a hyper competitive team this year. If they are hyper competitive, boy, would it be fascinating to see what they do. But I think it'll take care of itself. I don't even think they're going to capital T tank until the very, very end of the year when, boy, howdy, will they ever tank because they are shameless when they do it. I think they're just going to lose games because they're just a little light on talent, particularly in the conference that they're in, which is incredibly competitive. They went 21-61 a year ago. 21.5 is just lining up perfectly with what they were last season. I think they're a little better. I think 21.5 seems a little low to me. I don't want to give you betting advice. That's not what I'm here to do. Maybe Michael of 3 years ago would have offered you some betting advice. I'm older and more mature now. Here's my advice. Go do whatever you want to do. go do whatever you want to do. It's your money. Go do whatever you want to do. But to me, 21.5 seems a little low. I think it's beatable. But if you just kind of look at the rest of the odds, you can kind of see how they stack up. One, it's like the Blazers are, they were a bad team last year and they didn't get like notably, appreciably better. They got different, and I think Denny Avdia will help overall as a player more than Malcolm Brogdon did. But that's basically all they did was they changed out Denny Avdia for Malcolm Brogdon, and they added Donovan Clingan in place of Moses Brown. I think Donovan Clingan will be an upgrade over Moses Brown. I'm pretty comfortable in that prediction. But like, is that 4 wins? Probably not, right? It's probably not 4 wins better. It's like that's asking a lot of a young player to impact that level of with like the number of minutes that Clingan's going to play, particularly early in the season. Avdia is going to help a bunch. Is he way better than Malcolm Brogdon? I think he's better. I don't think that's controversial, but he's helpful in a position where they needed help. But having Brogdon not in the game means like probably more minutes for Scoot Henderson, who struggled a bunch last year. And more minutes of Scoot and Anthony Simons together, which has not been a good pairing in their minutes together last season. So like we'll see. Like I don't think the Blazers are like way better, but I do think 21.5 seems a little bit low. But when you kind of look at the rest of how the good folks at Fanduel have the over-under set, you kind of see how the Blazers ended up here. The East is just way worse than the West. I think we know that collectively, but I think these over-under, like, if you follow the league, you know that there's kind of like 7 pretty bad East teams. There's probably 7 like kind of crappy East teams, 2 of which are going to be in the play-in. Congratulations in advance to Toronto and Chicago or whatever. But the Blazers at 21.5 are tied for the second lowest over-under line with Washington. The only team with a lower over-under line in the first FanDuel over-under predictions or over-under lines is Brooklyn at 19.5. And Brooklyn obviously like kind of bought back their ability to tank. That's what they did this summer. As they said, we're going to tank now. Here we go. They even made a trade with Houston to sort of require their own picks to like really be bad and have their own agency to truly be bad. Because if you don't own your own picks, being bad is maybe not beneficial, and it's how Reed Shepherd ends up in Houston. But in the East, there are 5 teams with an over-under line below 30. Brooklyn at 19.5, the Wizards at 21.5, Detroit at 25.5, Chicago at 27.5, and Charlotte at 29.5. That's 5 teams under 30 wins. So if everybody hits like right at their line, you're talking 5 50 loss teams in the East, plus some 60 loss teams down there with Washington and Brooklyn. That's tough. There's 2 other teams that are under 35 with their over-under line. Atlanta at 34.5 and Toronto at 30.5. That means there are 7 teams in the East that are predicted to win, or not predicted, that their over-under lines are set as losing teams. Below 35 is their over-under lines. Losing teams. I mean, only 8 teams in the conference have an over-under line where they would win more than they lose, based on the early prognostications or the early betting lines. In the West, including the Blazers, there's just 4 teams below 41 and 2 teams below 30. The Clippers at 40.5, San Antonio's at 36.5, Utah's at 27.5, Portland's at 21.5, way on down there. But if you have 7 teams below 35 in the Eastern Conference and 2 teams below 35 in the West, you kind of get how the Blazers are going to end up at 21.5 because those East teams are going to play each other. The way the schedule breaks out is that in the conference you play dang near everyone in your own conference 4 times except for a collection of teams you play thrice. And then the other East-West, you play home and home. You play 2 each. So like those East teams, they're just going to play each other. Washington and Detroit are going to play each other 4 times. Somebody has to win those games. Chicago and Charlotte are going to play each other. Someone has to win those games. So those totals are going to be juiced. But they still stink. Obviously, they're going to play the West, and it's going to be a problem. But like why those numbers are maybe a little higher than the Blazers, but are still aren't way lower, is because they're going to have to play each other. But like these are bad basketball teams in the East. The Blazers are going to have to, they'll play those teams twice, but they also going to have to just play teams in the West. And here's some math for you. If there's 4 teams below 41, with an over-under line that suggests that they're sort of on the below 500 side of the betting world, that means there's 11 teams in the West that are projected right now to have an over-under line that is above 41 wins, that have winning records, including 4 teams, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota, and Oklahoma City, that have over-under lines set above 50. the West is just brutal, and that's kind of playing into where the Blazers are. Like the West, they're just going to have to play against a bunch of tough teams. The West looks like it's going to feast on the East this year. That means there are more bad teams in the East, but in terms of overall like raw plus minus, because it is a zero-sum game, every game has a result. These, East teams someone is going to have to win some of those games. So they're going to rack up, like, as opposed to being a 23-win team, you're going to be a 27-win team because you unfortunately had to play Detroit 3 more times, had to play Charlotte 3 more times, had to play Atlanta 3 more times. I think the Blazers being the worst team in the West is right. I think that's correct. If you just look at their talent, I think if you look at the teams in the Western Conference, the Blazers have the worst best player of any team in the West. That is maybe a very reductive way to look at it, but a lot of times during the regular season, it's a talent game, and the Blazers and top-end talent is really important. I think the Blazers are better than they were, but their top-end talent is not as competitive as any other teams. Obviously, if Utah trades Lauri Markkanen, those things change really quickly, but I think 21.5 is a little bit light. I think it's a little bit light, in my opinion. Let's talk about in the second segment how they would get there. How they would get to that 22nd win. What has to go right for them to hit that over? That's what we'll talk about in the second segment. Join me in that second segment, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you about Gametime. It's the place for last-minute tickets. It's the app that rewards procrastinators. What I like about Gametime is that when I'm looking for tickets, it's like 2 clicks, maybe 4 clicks if you're a little bit clicky. But for me, it's usually got my recent searches saved in there, and I'm looking for Portland sporting events because that's where I live. So I'm looking for Timbers tickets. I'm looking for Thorns tickets. I haven't been to a Blazer game as a fan in a long time, but I have looked up Blazer tickets on the app many a times. In a couple clicks, 2 to 4 clicks, you have a picture of the arena right there on your phone, and then what you see is what you get pricing. So there's no hidden fees. You don't click on something and find that there's like a $17 convenience fee. If it says it's going to cost you $34 to get in and watch the Timbers this weekend, it's going to cost you $34 right there in the app. No funny business. All in pricing, no gimmicks. Plus, up to 60% off when you're looking for last minute tickets versus the list price. So you see a face value ticket and you say, like, oh, that's a lot of money. Well, go to Gametime and wait a little bit because they reward you for being a last-minute ticket purchaser. Look, day of, afternoon of, evening of, even after events start, you can find deals on tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with a Gametime app. Here's what you do. You download the app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You got $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the app, create an account, and use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime, last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, let's keep on rocking. Here's how the Blazers beat their over-under. They're better than they were last year. Maybe not like raw, just talent better, but there's a lot of reasons to think they'll be better, right? There's a lot of reasons to think they'll be better. Scoot Henderson in his rookie season was one of the worst players in the NBA. If he improves to being not one of the worst players in the NBA, but merely a below average young player trying to figure it out, that's a massive step forward. Shaedon Sharpe played 32 games a season ago. More Shaedon Sharpe, say like 70 games of Shaedon Sharpe, the Blazers will be more effective. And Sharpe's entering year 3, so not only will he be available more, but he could potentially be vastly improved. Certainly has a potential to be a major breakout candidate. Has the skills, if he can put it together with consistency, to be an excellent player. Whether he can get there is a conversation for another day, but he certainly has the tools and the makeup and the size and the physicality and the athleticism to be a very special player. Score from all 3 levels. Budding playmaking chops at various points in his career. Like he's got the juice, and if he be consistent with the juice, the Blazers are going to be a lot better than they were last year when they went 21-61. DeAndre Ayton started the season for the Blazers awful. He was awful. I think you can sugarcoat it in a lot of different ways. I don't feel the need to do that. Prior to Christmas, DeAndre Ayton in a Blazers uniform was awful. Then he got hurt. Then he missed a month. Then he came back. then after maybe like a couple funky games, right when he was getting back into the lineup, he was really, really, really good after the All-Star break. Like he kind of he found how he was going to score. He got better chemistry with his teammates from playing more. He was more engaged, particularly on defense. He had a really brutal December where it's just like he looked like he was just like checked out. And he was really good. After the All-Star break, he was really good. He was like 10x times more effective, 25x times more effective. He was way better. If you get something, honestly, you don't even need to get that level of play from him. If you do get that level of play from them, the Blazers are going to be better. If you just don't have the stretch to begin the year, the first 30 games or 25 games, when he was just like a negative basketball player, he was very bad, you're going to be better. You're going to win more games. You're going to be better. They have more depth. They were a little light at the center position. Now they probably have one too many centers, but Donovan Clingan is going to help. If Rob Williams, who only played 6 games last year, if he's healthy for any chunk of time, he's a really impactful player. Really impactful player. He's a huge unknown, so I don't want to put too much on him, and it's like hard to figure out how the Blazers are going to use him right now, but like if he's available, huge upgrade to what they had. Huge, with all due respect to Duop Reef, like huge upgrade to what they had in terms of that impact. Anfernee Simons got hurt on night 1 last year and missed 18 games. More availability of Anfernee Simons and a continued improvement for a young man who's entering year 7 in the league. They'll be better with him. They'll be better. Availability, internal improvement, and then some new additions. I think young players, before we get into the Denny Avdia thing, I think some young players that I'm not mentioning here, like Tumani Kamara got better as a shooter as the season went on. If he continues to improve his offensive game and continues to be a very highly impactful defensive player, the Blazers are going to improve. They're going to win more than 21 games. Jabari Walker, I don't know his spot in the rotation, but if he can figure out how he contributes on offense, he's got some real rebounding chops and some physicality on defense that makes you feel like, and he's a young player entering year 3, he could be a lot better. Matisse Thybulle, if he shoots like he did in the first half of the season, the Blazers offense is going to be better. And then the new guy. I mentioned Clingan a little bit, but I think like Clingan's going to play like 15 to 20 minutes at the most in his rookie season. Like I think he's going to play like, if I had to put a number on it, he's going to average like 19 minutes in year 1. Maybe more because of injuries. Like the thing about projecting, like who's going to play in the crowded roster, it's like people get hurt, people get traded, people get sick. It's like, you miss time here and some dude plays really well and they say he has to play every night now because he's good. But the Blazers made a trade. And instead of having kind of a crowded backcourt where they're trying to find, 28 plus minutes a night for 4 guards that are similar size, and it's hard to play 3 of them together at any one time, and then they had injuries, and it was hard to just figure it all out. Instead, they traded for Denny Avdia. And now the Blazers are a little crowded at sort of like the young 3-4, mostly small forward-y type forwards, like young wings. But Avdia is a pretty obvious upgrade over their other options in the past because of his ball handling. He had a career year shooting the ball last year, relatively low volume, and he really crushed it from the corners and struggled from above break. But if he continues the trajectory of being an improved shooter, even if he doesn't match last year's total, but he's better than he was in his first 3 seasons in the league, plus the ball handling he brings, plus the defensive versatility he brings, he allows the Blazers to play different matchups where they could go bigger. They could conceivably go smaller with him at the 4 and play really fast. They could finally run. There's a lot of reasons to think that Avdia answers a lot of questions that this Blazers team asks. Where does our extra playmaking come from? Denny Avdia. Where does our extra shooting on the wing come from? Denny Avdia. Where does our, who is the other point of attack defender that can help out Tumani Kamara? Denny Avdia. Like he just, what is the forward you can play next to Jeremy Grant that can be a good enough rebounder to mitigate some of Jeremy Grant's weaknesses and allow him to be the best version of himself with his strengths as a catch and shoot guy and the occasional ISO bucket, although it's more than occasional. Denny Avdia, right? He could be that rebounder that mitigates some of Jeremy Grant's weaknesses and blah, 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 blah. He answers so many questions. It's maybe a little pressure to say like Denny Avdia is going to make the Blazers a 35-win team. And I think that is obviously a little rich. But like there are so many reasons to think they'll get there because internal improvement of the young guys like Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, even their veterans, DeAndre Ayton's, just celebrated his 26th birthday. He ain't old. He's been in the league a long time, 2018 draft, but he's not old. He's probably close to a finished product in terms of like what he's going to be, but that doesn't mean that he can't like sharpen what he's already good at. But by finished product, I mean he's unlikely. Guys, I don't think he's going to launch threes this year. Get over it. I also don't think he's power forward. Chill. But like he has some skills that he's very good at. You continue to sharpen the things that you're good at, and you do that with more consistency, you get better basketball. I think the Blazers can play more reasonable, large wing lineups that don't sacrifice all of their offense because Avdija allows them to do that, and I think Toumani Camara could take steps forward. A roster that can improve internally, a roster that makes more sense, and a little bit more health luck. They might not be healthier, but like have the injuries not all match up so no one ever plays together, right? So he's like more Shaedon Sharpe, more Anfernee Simons, more of them available together, more DeAndre Ayton available, with... So you just get more chemistry and you build on that, and that's how you win. We're not talking a lot of wins. We're talking how you beat the over-under. How do you win a 20-second game? You get a little bit of all of those things I just mentioned, and bing, bang, boom, you're a 25-win team, and you've smoked that Vegas. Oh, you smoked Fanduel's over-under from way back in July. So what happens if they don't do it? Like, what does it look like if they're a 21-win team? Let's talk about that to close the show and some other closing thoughts. We're leading with positivity. What does a cold shower feel like? Let's come take a cold shower real quick and let's be honest about things in the third segment. Join me there, won't ya? Still a Bass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. 21.5 is the FanDuel over-under for the Blazers this season. I enumerated many obvious reasons why the Blazers can beat 21.5. It seems a little low. But I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's a wild number. Like, I don't... There was a time when in the first post LaMarcus year, I remember this well. I was on the beat then, covering the team on a day-to-day basis and traveling with the newspaper. It was I'm in the game, baby. I'm recording a podcast every day, but it's a little bit different. It is that first year, the Blazers over-under was 24.5. And that seemed preposterous that they would only win 24 games. They won 44. I didn't think they were going to win 44 games, but I thought they were like a 32-win team. That's 50 losses. That feels so many. I know there are some Blazer fans, and these people kind of drive me nuts. Although I get it. I get the pragmatic part of it, but it drives me nuts that it's like my favorite team has to lose. I want this team to go 7-75. No, you don't. No, you don't. Last year was stinky. It stinks to watch them lose 61 games. It stinks to have so many games that don't matter at the end of the season. It stinks to have so many games where your team is lying about injuries in order to secure losses. It stinks. It might be pragmatic and good for draft stuff and all of those things, but it stinks. And you're allowed to root however you root. I've said it a bunch of times. You can fan how you want, baby. That's a good part about this country, at least for now. Who knows what will change in November? They'll make you only root for wins. But like, you can root how you want to root. But I don't buy it that you actually enjoy the losses. I don't buy it. It stinks. And I remember that number 24.5 from that first post LaMarcus year. That was LaMarcus left in 2015. So it was a 15-16 season. If you were around reading my work at the Oregonian back then, thanks for rocking with me. But moreover, this doesn't feel necessarily like that. It doesn't feel like, what the hell, 24.5? No, this feels like 21.5. I bet for me, this seems a little light, but if like they were to win 18 games, it wouldn't shock me. If they were to win 20 games, it wouldn't shock me. Because you know what they're going to do. One, like, development of players is neither guaranteed nor linear. I think Donovan Clingan looks pretty good in Summer League. Excellent on defense. Not pretty good. I don't need to couch that. Excellent on defense. He just struggled on offense. He struggled. And I think he'll probably be a little bit better with better players, but the offense might be tough for him all season long. And that might be a struggle for him. And how much does a really good defensive rookie impact winning, right? But I think he'll be good. But there's not a chance he might be a negative player is what I'm saying. Like, because generally the safest bet is generally rookies are bad in the like grand scheme of like winning basketball games at a high level, right? Doesn't mean anything for Klingen's career if he struggles a little bit to impact winning in year one. But I think his offensive limitations are fairly obvious. That's reason one. Is things like that, right? Is that maybe Tumani Kamara, who you're hoping in year two takes this like perfect, clean, linear. Okay, first half of the season he struggled a lot to shoot from three. Second half of the season he was better. Okay, then he just then the graph just keeps going up forever, and maybe it does, right? And that's the reason they'll hit the over. But development is neither guaranteed nor linear, right? Some guys you bounce all around the map as you get better. I think one of the big things for me is like Shaedon Sharpe is a total unknown. He's got the tools, but it's hard to know what he is as a player. I think there's obviously plenty of reasons to be, optimistic. That's why I led with the optimism, because I do lean more towards that with him. But we just don't know. Scoot Anderson really struggled in year one. We'll see what he is in year two. The fit with him and Anfernee Simons, even if they're both pretty good, is rocky, such that it might just not really work on defense. And the Blazers are just light on talent. So, maybe they'll be flirting with, okay, this is like a 29-30 win team when they're fully healthy. And then here's where the over-under stuff comes in. Say they're on pace to win 29 games pretty easily, right? That's still a rocky season, right? That's still 50 losses. That's a plenty of losing. It'll feel like a lot of losing when they're on pace for, at the 62 game mark, right? With 20 games left, they're right on pace to win about 28, 29 games. You know what they're going to do. You don't need to act like you don't know what they're going to do. They're going to lie about injuries. They're going to hold veterans out. They're going to hold successful players out, and they're going to lose games on purpose, so help them. I think part of what's baked into this over-under is that what the Blazers can be with their talent is, like a 30-ish win team, right? If fully healthy, really competitive, 32 win team. I think that's pretty realistic in the West, right? Because it's just like, it's brutal. It's really good, and the Blazers' top-end talent is not close to the top-end talent of, say, even the second-best team in the West, right? Like, Lauri Markkanen is significantly better than anyone on the Blazers, and he's the best player on the second-worst team in the Western Conference. Obviously, some teams will underachieve and yada, 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 like, and health and everything and all that, but, like, we're assuming relative health for all teams, including the Blazers, when we're talking about this. Even the Blazers are like on pace for 34 wins, 35 wins at the 60-game mark. They're going to pull the plug. They are shameless and egregious in their willingness to do that. So part of the reason why they won't hit that over-under total is because they won't let themselves. They won't let themselves. We've seen them do it. You don't need to, it's not a mystery, right? We've seen them now 3 straight years to varying degrees fully pull the plug and try to lose games, including one game during the Wemby draft, which was when the Blazers drafted Scoot, not this previous draft, but the 2023 draft. It's like, they held Shaedon Sharpe out of a game because he was too good as a rookie who had struggled for most of the year, but he had sort of graduated to the point of too good to play. They held him out of a game to actively lose to the Spurs in one of the most egregious tanking games you'll ever see. Shout out to the John Butler Jr. at point guard experience. You know what they're going to do. You don't got to act like they're not going to do it. You can admit what the deal, you know the score of the game, and so do they. They want to lose. They want to draft Cooper Flagg. They want to draft Ace Bailey. They want to be at the top of the draft, making selections in the top 3 picks and preferably at the top, at number 1 overall. And they will do the things necessary to ensure they get there because they have shown a willingness, maybe even more aggressive than most other teams in the league, to lose games when they need to lose them. In the grand scheme, that's the correct strategy. In like the functional rooting for your team to win, boy, does it make March and April unfun. Boy, does it make those games unfun. But I think one of the reasons why they won't hit it is like sort of like natural stumbles from the young players, right? Oh, hey, up and down year from Tumani Kamara. Scoot Henderson's better, but he's still not quite there. Donovan McClingan's not ready. Shaden Sharp is obviously pretty good, but he's not that like impact winning at a high level type guy. And even when Scoot and Anthony Simons are playing well, playing them together means for a Rocky defense. All of the things, right? Denny Avdia is better as a shooter, but he doesn't match his like 38% from three last year. Like even just like little things like, oh, Avdia shot 36% from three. Okay, well that's like one less bucket a night, basically, right? And for a team who's going to have pretty thin margin for error in the really crowded Western Conference, those little things pile up, and that's how you end up getting into a range where you can be a team that loses 60-some games, because when you get down to it, the final 15 to 20 games, the Blazers will like sign dudes off the street that we don't know and play them too many minutes and play funky lineups and let Delano Banton shoot the ball 37 times and just not care because the goal is to lose. The reason they won't hit it is because they don't want to hit it, because they want to lose the games, because they are bad by design and they will be worse by choice if need be. I still think 21.5 is light. I think it's light. I think they can do it. Why I'm not giving you betting advice is because will they do it, right? Like, will they? Hard to say, right? It's hard to say what they will and are willing not to do. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow's show. We do 5 of these a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube, free on all your platforms. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.